The house is ours now. My daughter said less than 3 hours after we buried my husband. Claire stood in the middle of my living room with one hand resting on the fireplace mantel. Behind her, relatives were still eating sandwiches from paper plates and speaking in the soft voices people use after funerals. Her husband, Jason, looked toward the staircase. "We'll need to clear out the upstairs first," he said. "That will make the renovations easier." Claire nodded as if they were discussing a property they had just purchased. I was still wearing the black dress I had worn to the cemetery. My husband's wedding ring was inside the pocket near my heart because I had not been ready to leave it at the funeral home. I looked at my daughter and asked, "What did you say?" Claire's expression softened in a way that almost looked like sympathy. "Dad left us the house," she said. "He told me months ago, 'You don't need this much space anymore, Mom. Once everything is settled, Jason and I will move in and we'll find somewhere more manageable for you.'" Somewhere more manageable. She was already planning to remove me from the home where I had lived for 31 years. I could have corrected her immediately. I could have told her that her father had not owned the house when he died. I could have shown her the recorded deed, the trust documents, and the letter he had left in our attorney's safe. Instead, I lowered my eyes, pressed my fingers against the ring in my pocket, and said, "I see." Claire mistook my grief for weakness. Jason mistook my silence for permission. For the next 23 days, I let them believe the house belonged to them. My name is Helena Warren. I was 65 when my husband, David, died from pancreatic cancer. David and I had been married for 34 years. He was not a wealthy man, although some people assumed he was because he dressed well and had spent most of his career managing a regional insurance office. We lived in a large brick house outside Columbus, Ohio. It had 4 bedrooms, a wide front porch, and a garden David cared for more patiently than he cared for most people. The house had belonged to my parents. My father bought it when I was 9 years old. My mother planted the lilac bushes beside the driveway. I learned to ride a bicycle on the cracked pavement behind the garage. I brought David there for dinner 6 months after we met. When my mother died, she left the house to me. David and I were already married by then. He moved in, repaired the roof, replaced the old wiring, and spent years turning it into our home. But legally, the property remained mine. That never mattered during our marriage. We shared everything that needed to be shared. We paid expenses together. We made decisions together. David never treated the house as though he were merely a guest, and I never reminded him that my name was the only one on the original deed. When we refinanced to renovate the kitchen, I added him to the title. It felt natural. We were husband and wife. We expected to grow old together. Our only child, Claire, grew up in that house. She was bright, determined, and impatient from the moment she learned to speak. When she was little, determination helped her. She practiced the piano until her fingers hurt. She earned scholarships. She became a successful real estate agent before she turned 30. But as she grew older, determination became something harder. Claire did not like waiting. She did not like hearing no. And when she believed something should belong to her, she could create an impressive list of reasons why everyone else should agree. Jason made that part of her worse. He worked as a residential contractor, although his business never seemed as successful as he claimed. Every year, he had a new truck, new tools, and a new explanation for why his latest project had failed to make money. Together, Claire and Jason became obsessed with property. They bought neglected houses, renovated them quickly, and sold them. Sometimes they earned money, sometimes they lost it. But no matter what happened, they spoke as if their next deal would change everything. 5 years before David died, Claire asked us to invest in one of their projects. She and Jason wanted to convert an old farmhouse into a wedding venue. They needed $200,000. David declined before I could answer. "It is too much risk," he said. Claire became furious. "You have equity sitting in this house doing nothing." "It is not doing nothing," David replied. "It is giving your mother a secure place to live. You act like I'm asking you to gamble it. You are asking us to borrow against it. It would come back with profit." "It might." Claire turned toward me. Mom, say something. I looked at the financial projections she had placed on our dining room table. They assumed the wedding venue would be fully booked within 6 months. They did not include the cost of repairing the septic system, widening the road, or meeting county fire regulations. I agree with your father, I said. Claire did not speak to us for almost 2 months. The farmhouse project went forward without our money. 18 months later, it failed. Claire and Jason sold the property at a loss. We did not criticize them. David even helped Jason negotiate with one of the lenders. But something changed after that. Claire began talking about our house as though it were part of her future business plan. She would walk through the rooms and make comments. This wall should come down. You could fit another bathroom upstairs. The lot is large enough for a guest house. At family dinners, she would tell Jason what the property might sell for after renovations. David usually changed the subject. I told myself it was harmless. Parents often leave property to their children. Claire was our only daughter. One day, after both David and I were gone, the house probably would become hers. The problem was that Claire did not want to wait until one day. When David was diagnosed with cancer, she became more involved in our lives. At first, I was grateful. She drove him to appointments when I was tired. She collected prescriptions. She brought meals and helped organize medical bills. Then she began requesting documents. She asked for insurance policies. She wanted copies of the will. She said she needed to understand the mortgage, even though there had not been a mortgage for 11 years. One afternoon, I walked into David's hospital room and found Claire holding a folder beside his bed. David looked exhausted. "What is that?" I asked. "Just some paperwork," Claire said. "What kind?" "A power of attorney, in case Dad becomes unable to handle things. I already have his medical and financial power of attorney." Claire's smile disappeared. "You're overwhelmed." "I am tired, that is not the same thing. This would allow me to help." David reached for my hand. "I didn't sign it," he said. Claire closed the folder. "I was only trying to make things easier." After she left, David asked me to shut the door. "She has been asking about the house again," he said. "What did you tell her?" "That it will be taken care of." "What does that mean?" He looked toward the window. "It means I need to correct something I should have corrected years ago." 2 weeks later, David asked our attorney, Leonard Pierce, to visit the house. Leonard had handled our wills and business documents for more than 20 years. The three of us sat at the dining room table. David explained that he wanted his name removed from the house. I was surprised. "Why?" "Because it was yours before it was ours," he said, "and because I do not want anyone using my illness to create confusion." Leonard explained the options. David could transfer his interest directly to me, restoring me as sole owner. I could then place the property into my own revocable trust, naming whoever I chose as beneficiary after my death. The trust would not prevent me from selling the house, borrowing against it, changing beneficiaries, or living there for the rest of my life. It would simply make the ownership clear. I hesitated, not because I distrusted David, because signing those documents felt like admitting he might not recover. He reached across the table. "Helena, this is not about giving up," he said. "This is about making sure no one can hurry you after I'm gone." I signed. The transfer was recorded. The house entered my trust. Claire was not told. David hoped we would have years before the documents mattered. We had 11 months. His condition worsened in early spring. During his final weeks, Claire visited frequently, but every visit carried tension. She would adjust his blankets, ask how he felt, and then steer the conversation toward the future. "What do you want done with the furniture?" "Should Jason take over the repairs?" "Did you ever update the will?" David gave short answers. One evening, while I was making tea, I heard Claire ask him, "You still want me to have the house, right?" I stopped in the hallway. David's voice was weak. "Eventually, perhaps." "What does eventually mean?" "It means your mother lives there." Claire lowered her voice, but I could still hear her. "She cannot maintain that property alone. That will be her decision." You told me it would be mine. I told you that you were our only child. That is not the same thing. No, David said, it is. I entered the room before the conversation went further. Claire left soon afterward. In the driveway, she sat inside her car for several minutes before driving away. David died on a Tuesday morning in June. I was beside him. His breathing became slow, then quiet, and then it stopped. There was no dramatic final speech. He opened his eyes once, looked at me, and squeezed my hand. That was enough. The funeral took place 4 days later. Claire handled many of the arrangements. She selected the flowers, spoke to the church, and contacted relatives. I allowed it because I could barely think. After the burial, everyone returned to my house. Neighbors filled the kitchen. Cousins stood on the porch. People told stories about David and praised Claire for being so strong. Then, while I was carrying empty cups toward the kitchen, I heard Jason talking to his brother near the staircase. The layout is dated, but the structure is solid, he said. We could open the first floor and add a primary suite in the back. His brother asked, what about Helena? Jason lowered his voice. Claire will handle her. 10 minutes later, Claire told me the house was theirs. She claimed David had promised it to her. She said they would find somewhere smaller for me. And I said, I see. That evening, after the last relative left, I sat alone in the living room. There were crumbs on the carpet and half-empty glasses on the tables. Funeral flowers covered the fireplace. David's photograph stood beside the urn we had brought home from the church. I wanted to call Claire and tell her everything. I wanted to hear the shock in her voice when she learned the house had never entered David's estate. But David had taught me something during his illness. When people believe they already control you, they often reveal how far they plan to go. So I waited. The following morning, I called Leonard. He asked me to come to his office. I brought the funeral papers, David's personal files, and the folder Claire had left on my dining room table. That folder contained a handwritten list. Replace roof. Remove wall. New kitchen. Convert office. Move Helena. The last item had been underlined. Leonard read the page without changing expression. Has she asked you to sign anything? Not yet. Has she entered the house without your permission? She has a key. Did you give it to her? Years ago, for emergencies. Leonard folded his hands. Your home is not part of David's probate estate. The deed into your trust was properly recorded. Claire has no present ownership interest. Could David's will give her the house? He could not give away an asset he did not own. What does his will give her? His investment account, his vehicle, several personal items, and the remainder of his estate after expenses. It is a meaningful inheritance. Does she know? She has not attended the estate meeting. I looked down at the list. Should I tell her about the house now? Leonard considered the question. Legally, you can tell her whenever you choose, but do not allow her to remove property, begin construction, represent herself as the owner, or enter any agreement involving the house. That afternoon, I changed the alarm code. I did not change the locks. Not yet. 3 days later, Claire arrived with a woman carrying a camera. This is Natalie, she said. She photographs my listings. Is the house for sale? Not exactly. We need good before pictures. Before what? The renovation. Natalie looked uncomfortable. I thought the owner had approved this. Claire answered before I could. My mother is the owner for now. For now. I stepped aside. Go ahead, I said. Claire smiled. For the next hour, they photographed every room. Claire instructed Natalie to avoid showing the medical equipment still stored beside David's bedroom. She opened closets without asking. She moved framed family photographs off tables. In the kitchen, she told Natalie, all of this will be removed. I stood near the doorway and watched. Claire believed my silence meant I had accepted her plan. In reality, I was learning exactly what the plan was. 2 days later, Jason arrived with measuring equipment. He marked walls with pieces of blue tape. He removed a heating vent to inspect the ductwork. When I asked whether he intended to begin construction, he said, "Not until the estate transfers the property." "What if it does?" He laughed. Claire is the only child. That was their entire legal theory. Claire was the only child. Therefore, everything was already hers. The next week, she brought me brochures for 3 senior communities. The first was pleasant but expensive. The second was nearly an hour away. The third offered a small 1-bedroom apartment beside a busy highway. Claire recommended the third. "It's more realistic financially," she said. "I own this house without a mortgage. For now." There were those words again. She placed a form in front of me. It authorized the senior community to review my finances and reserve a unit. I am not signing this. It isn't a commitment. Then it does not need my signature. Claire exhaled sharply. "Mom, we cannot plan if you fight every step." "Who is we?" "Jason and me." "And what exactly are you planning?" Her patience disappeared. "We are planning how to protect the value of the house before it deteriorates. The roof is 6 years old. The interior is outdated. I live in the interior." She leaned back. "This is why Dad wanted me to handle everything. You become emotional." I looked at my daughter. "I buried my husband 11 days ago." "I know." "Do you?" Her face tightened. "I lost him too." That was true. Claire had lost her father. Grief does not always make people gentler. Sometimes it makes their worst instincts easier to justify. She gathered the brochures. "Jason has buyers who may be interested after the renovation. You are already discussing buyers. We are exploring options. For my house." She stood. "Dad promised it to me. Did he sign anything?" "He told me." "When?" "Last year." "What exactly did he say?" Claire hesitated. "He said the house would be mine someday." "Someday?" "Not after the funeral. Not immediately. Not while I was still living in it." But Claire had converted one vague sentence into permission to plan my removal. I let her leave without correcting her. The next discovery came from a neighbor. My friend Miriam called and asked whether I was moving. "I haven't decided to move." "That is strange." "Why?" "There was a man walking around your property this morning. He said he was checking setbacks for an addition." I had been at the cemetery placing flowers near David's grave. Jason had entered the property while I was away. I reviewed the security camera footage. He arrived with a survey technician and walked the entire lot. At one point, he used his old key to enter the garage. That was the moment my patience ended. I sent the footage to Leonard. The next morning, we changed every lock. Leonard also sent Claire and Jason a formal letter stating that they had no authority to enter the property, make alterations, hire contractors, or represent themselves as owners. He did not yet explain the trust. He simply told them to stop. Claire called me within 10 minutes of receiving it. "You hired a lawyer against your own daughter." I consulted the attorney who has handled our family documents for 20 years. Jason was only measuring. He entered my garage while I was away. "You gave us a key." "For emergencies." "This is an emergency. The house needs decisions." "No, you need decisions." She became silent. Then she said, "You are making this much harder than Dad wanted." "How do you know what he wanted?" "Because he trusted me." "Then attend the estate meeting on Thursday." Claire's voice changed. "What estate meeting?" "The one Leonard invited you to." I thought it was routine. "It is." "Will the house be transferred then?" "Come and find out." For the first time since the funeral, Claire sounded uncertain. Thursday morning, she and Jason arrived at Leonard's office 20 minutes early. I was already there. Claire wore a navy suit and carried the same leather portfolio she used for property closings. Jason had printed renovation estimates. They still believed the meeting was the beginning of their ownership. Leonard began with David's will. He explained the specific gifts. David's car went to Claire. His watch collection went to Jason. Claire received the investment account, valued at a little more than $240,000. After final medical expenses, funeral costs, and taxes, she would also receive most of the remaining probate estate. Claire's posture relaxed. Then she asked, "And the house?" Leonard closed the will. "The house is not part of David's estate." Jason leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It means David did not own it when he died." Claire looked at me. "Yes, he did." "No," Leonard said. "He transferred his interest to Helena 11 months ago. The property was then placed into Helena's revocable trust. He placed certified copies of the deed and trust certificate on the table." Claire did not touch them. "That is impossible. The deed was recorded last July. Dad would have told me. He was not required to." She turned toward me. "You did this while he was sick. David requested it. You pressured him." Leonard's voice remained calm. "I met privately with David before the transfer. He understood the documents and explained his reasons clearly." "What reasons?" Leonard looked at me. I removed an envelope from my handbag. David had left 2 letters with Leonard. One was for me. The other was for Claire. I slid her letter across the table. Her name was written on the front in her father's handwriting. Claire stared at it. Then she opened it. "My dear Claire, I love you, and I am proud of many things you have accomplished. But I have watched your ambition become entitlement, especially where the house is concerned. That house is your mother's history, security, and home. It is not a dormant investment waiting for you to unlock. You once asked whether it would be yours someday. I told you it might, because your mother and I assumed you would inherit what remained after both of us were gone. That was never permission to hurry her out of it. I transferred my interest back to your mother, because I became concerned that my illness would be used to pressure her. If you are reading this and you have respected her choices, then no harm has been done. If you are reading this after trying to claim the house, I hope the truth stops you before greed costs you something more valuable than property. Your father." Claire's hands trembled. Jason looked toward the window. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Claire placed the letter on the table. "He wrote this because you turned him against me." "No," I said. "He wrote it because you brought him a power of attorney form in the hospital. I was helping. You asked about the house while he was dying. I needed to know what would happen. You needed to wait." Tears filled her eyes, but her anger remained. "You let us spend weeks planning." "Yes. You let us hire people. I did not authorize you to hire anyone. You watched us measure rooms and take photographs. I watched you show me what you intended to do before you had any legal right to do it." Jason pushed his renovation estimates into his portfolio. "We were acting based on what David told Claire. You entered my property after being told not to," I said. "You brought a surveyor here while I was visiting my husband's grave." He looked down. Claire stood. "So what happens now? The house remains mine. And after you die, that is no longer your concern." Her face went still. "You removed me from the trust." I had. 2 days after the funeral, before the photographs and surveyor, I had still intended to leave the house to Claire. By the day of the estate meeting, I had changed my plan. The trust now instructed that the property be sold after my death. A portion would support a local hospice program that had cared for David. Another portion would create scholarships for nursing students at the community college where I had once taught. Claire would receive a smaller cash gift, but she would never own the house. "I changed the trust," I said. "You punished me. I protected the house from becoming a prize you believed you had already won. That is punishment." "No, losing something you never owned is not punishment." Claire stared at me as if she no longer recognized me. Perhaps she did not. For years, I had softened every disagreement. I had forgiven disrespect before she apologized. I had confused keeping peace with preserving a relationship. David's death ended that habit. Claire left the office without taking her father's letter. I picked it up and placed it inside my handbag. The weeks that followed were quiet. Jason canceled the survey and photography invoices, after Leonard informed the companies that I had never authorized the work. The photographer apologized. The survey technician provided a written statement confirming that Jason had represented himself as the future owner. I did not pursue legal action. I wanted the intrusion documented, not dramatized. Claire received the inheritance her father had legally left her. I did not interfere with it. She used part of the money to pay business debts. She and Jason separated 6 months later. I later learned that he had been more deeply in debt than any of us knew. He had viewed my house as the project that would rescue his company. That did not excuse Claire, but it explained why their plans had moved so quickly. For almost a year, my daughter and I spoke only through occasional messages. On the first anniversary of David's death, I visited the cemetery alone. When I returned home, Claire was sitting on the front porch. She looked thinner, older. For once, she had arrived without a folder. "I didn't use my old key," she said. "It would not have worked." I assumed that. I unlocked the door, but she did not enter. "I came to apologize," she said. I waited. "I have tried to write it down," she continued. "Everything sounded like an excuse." "Then do not give me an excuse." She nodded. I treated Dad's death like the beginning of a transaction. The honesty of the sentence surprised me. I told myself I was protecting the house. Really, I was trying to protect Jason's business and the future I thought we deserved. And me. She looked toward the lilac bushes beside the driveway. "I treated you like an obstacle." "Yes. I am sorry." The apology did not repair everything. But it was the first time Claire described what she had done without hiding behind the words, helping, planning, or protecting. I sat beside her on the porch. She asked whether I still had David's letter. "I do." "Could I read it again?" I brought it outside. This time, she read it slowly. When she reached the sentence about greed costing her something more valuable than property, she began to cry. "I thought he didn't trust me," she said. "He wanted to." "Did you remove me from the trust before or after the meeting?" "Before." She gave a sad laugh. "So you already knew." "I knew what I needed to do." "Will you ever change it back?" There was a time when that question would have made me feel guilty. It did not anymore. "No," I said. Claire absorbed the answer. Then she nodded. "All right." That was the beginning of our new relationship. Not the old one restored. Something different. She visits now, but she calls first. She does not comment on the value of the property. She does not move furniture or discuss renovations. When something needs repair, I hire the contractor. When I need help, I ask. And when I say no, the conversation ends there. The house still looks much as it did when David was alive. I repainted his office, but I kept the old desk. I turned one upstairs bedroom into a sewing room. The wall Jason wanted to remove is still standing. Every spring, the lilacs my mother planted bloom beside the driveway. Sometimes I sit on the porch and think about the day of the funeral. I remember Claire's hand on the fireplace mantel. I remember Jason planning the upstairs renovation, while David's friends were still eating in the kitchen. Most of all, I remember how small I felt inside my black dress. Grief had emptied me. My daughter saw that emptiness and believed it meant there was nothing left capable of resisting her. She was wrong. I let Claire believe the house was hers, because correcting her immediately would have ended one conversation. Waiting revealed the truth. She did not merely misunderstand a will. She had planned my removal, inspected my rooms, hired workers, and treated my future as an inconvenience before she owned a single brick. The documents protected my home, but the waiting protected me from doubting my decision. My husband understood something before I did. A promise about someday is not ownership today. Helping a grieving parent is not the same as managing them. And love does not entitle a child to take what a parent is still using to live. David left my daughter an inheritance. He left me something more important. He left me clarity. The house was mine before he came into my life. It became our home while we were together. And after he died, It remained the place where I was allowed to grieve, recover, and decide my own future. Claire once believed she was waiting for me to leave. Now she understands that my life is not a waiting room for her inheritance. Someday, this house will be sold. Students I will never meet will receive help with their education. Families caring for someone at the end of life will receive support. The value Claire tried to claim will become something larger than a renovated kitchen or another profitable sale. I do not consider that revenge. Revenge would have meant using the house to hurt my daughter. I chose to use it in a way that reflected the man we both lost. After my husband's funeral, my daughter said, "The house is ours now." I let her believe it. Not because I was weak. Not because I was afraid. And not because I had no answer. I let her believe it because sometimes the clearest way to understand another person's intentions is to stop correcting them and watch what they do when they think you have no power left. She planned. She measured. She chose where I would live. Then one recorded deed, one protected trust, and one final letter from her father returned everything to its proper place. The house stayed with its owner. My daughter faced the truth. And I learned that protecting your home does not make you selfish. Sometimes it is the first step toward remembering that your life still belongs to you.